We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Saturday. Normally, Ed might be on the show today, but I wasn't able to record with Ed today because I fucking spent 10 hours with a 3-year-old. Now, I love this kid more than anything in the world, but 10 hours with a 3-year-old that's kind of a smart aleck on top of it and isn't afraid to talk shit to grandpa. It was a rough day. I am tired. So I wasn't able to meet up with Ed prior uh, on Friday. But as luck would have it, at the last minute, another former guest and somebody who emails in frequently, Maddie from Michigan, said she would join us. So I'm happy for that. Maddie, welcome to the show. And I think you suggested that you had a little sympathy for me and you thought I might need the help. And well, you were right.
Yeah, when I was listening to today's podcast about how you were saying you're going to be with your granddaughter all day, I thought, well, when he records tonight, he might want a hand.
Yeah, no question. No question. I mean, we had a good time. We played hide and seek 15 times. We saw The Good Dinosaur and Aladdin. We saw a bunch of Bluey commercials, or not commercials, cartoons. We did some coloring. We did some puzzles. I didn't do one TikTok till about a half hour ago. So I was pretty much took the day off to spend time with my granddaughter, which I love. I love doing it. But 10 hours in one fell swoop, that's a bitch. That's hard.
Probably haven't done that since they were your kids.
Right. And I was thinking to myself, if this is so tough now, how did I do it back then? Well, of course, my wife picked up a good chunk of the load there too. So it wasn't quite as tough for me. But when you never get to leave and they're always there, it's hard. I mean, and she's only 3. She's got a good 20 years before she's probably out of the house. That's a long time to invest. I never felt so happy to be an empty nester than I do today.
Yeah, my wife and I, we still got a few more years before we are empty nesters, but there's parts of us that are looking forward to it, but also the parts that are dreading it at the same time.
Well, I know there's that. There's a certain amount of dread to that. But I got to tell you, when you get to the point, the elderly state that I get into, that I'm at 63, where my wife and I are essentially retired, the kids are on their own doing whatever they're doing. It's kind of nice just to say, what the fuck you want to do? You want to go out to dinner? You want to go to the casino? You want to go out of town and be able to do that? That's incredible. After all those years juggling and trying to make time for all these things. And now you don't have to do that. It is a welcome relief. I've got to tell you.
If my wife wanted to go to the casino, it would be really weird for me because I'm not allowed to play at casinos.
Well, that's right. That's right. People may remember that, and forgive me if I say this wrong, but you're essentially a technician of said casino machines.
Yep, of slot machines and ATMs, and it's fun, but they're like, nope, you're not allowed to gamble at all.
Well, let me ask you this, and I'm not going to ask you for any secrets because you couldn't tell me even if you knew any. But in your field of business, in your expertise, if you sat down in front of a slot machine, would you have an advantage over dumbass me sitting in front of a slot machine if we were going side by side? Would there be an advantage you would have over anybody else?
Absolutely not.
Really?
The way the computer code's written, there is no way to predict anything on those games anymore.
So there's no little tricks or anything that might give you an edge. Well, that's
No,
good. That's
what I tell people when they ask, I'm like, best thing to do is lose your money as slowly as possible.
and that's kind of the way my wife and I look at it. We don't mind losing the money, but we don't want to be out of there in a half hour. If we're going to waste $100, we want at least a few hours of entertainment and at least
Yep.
some possibilities or hopes that we might win. Um, and since we're on the topic, has nothing to do with politics. My wife and I have talked about this for 35 years. she still agonizes over a situation where she was at a casino with some friends. And this is when she used to smoke. And she was playing it. Nothing was happening. Pretty typical that night on the machine. And she gets up to get a cigarette when she used to smoke. The moment she gets up, this bride, currently in her wedding dress, sits down at that same machine and wins $250,000. She, in her mind, feels like she missed winning $250,000 by one spin. And from what I know about these machines, is it's all random. Anything can come up at any time. She hit it at the right moment, at the right time, in the right sequence, and that doesn't suggest my wife would have done the same thing had she stayed on that machine. Am I right about that?
Pretty much, it would really depend on if she was playing a truly old mechanical game, since it was so long ago,
Yeah,
less computer controlled.
right.
But all of the games now are computer controlled, and when the software is in them, they're sealed. And like if somebody hits a, we call called a wide area progressive, where you're playing against other people playing at other casinos, and it all the money dumps into one. We have a seal on the CPU. The sites always have seals on the CPU. There's no way you can get in and modify anything on them.
And there's one thing that people do all the time is when they walk into a casino, they have their favorite machines because they might have won on it 6 years ago and they know it's just ready to hit again. Is there any validity to that? That there's certain machines, uh, whether it be the luck of the player or just the volatility of that particular machine?
It would a lot of it depends on the casino's rules and the game profile. Because when we set up a game, what we do is we set a percentage, and it's usually right around 90%, give or take. And that just means that 90% of the time you will win something.
Right,
And that could be a penny all the way up to the grand jackpot.
right, right. Well, I just want to remind folks you're listening to Slot Talk. Maddie and I are talking about casinos. If you came here for politics, yeah, you fucking missed it. No, I'm kidding. We're going to talk about politics because Maddie's very knowledgeable about a lot of the things we talk about, has some great insights. And since she happens to be in Michigan, there's a lot of shit going down in Michigan. And I'm interested in what you see it as your from your perspective. First of all, we heard about this audio tape where Donald Trump and Ronna McDaniel were literally coercing the Secretary of State to not certify the election in Michigan back in 2020. People were dumbfounded when they heard the recording of the Georgia situation with Brad Raffensperger. For my money, from what I heard about that tape, this is far and away worse than the Georgia tape because they're actually committing the crime on tape using their voices. What's your perspective as a Michigander?
My perspective is I know our Attorney General, Dana Nessel,
Mm-hmm.
she, I wouldn't want to go toe to toe with her. And
She's
she's not afraid to bring the hard cases, because she brought, in Michigan was one of the first times ever that our attorney general brought charges against a school shooter's parents for negligence.
oh wow, yeah,
And it was Ethan Crumley from a few years ago.
right.
He was just sentenced, and the parents are due to go on trial here in a couple of months. And that before that was unheard of. And I give her kudos that she's willing to take that shot. And something like this, it with the evidence that they have, I don't see that she would hesitate.
Well, clearly Jack Smith is going to have an interest in that audio tape. There's nothing he can really charge in that situation because it was in the state of Michigan, but it does show patterns and it does habitual behavior of Donald Trump of doing these sort of things. Actually, the Fonnie Willis in Georgia might be interested in the audio recording too, because it would support what she's claiming in Georgia. Well, let me ask you
Yeah,
this. Fonnie Willis brought charges in Georgia. She's the only state to do that. We have federal charges, but she's the only state to do it. Given how egregious the audio recording is supposed to be in Michigan, do you see your attorney general actually bringing state charges against the likes of Donald Trump, Ronna McDaniel, and whoever else was involved in this shit?
I could see it happening. I wouldn't be surprised if she did something like that. And right now, it seems like, from what I've been hearing of the fake electors in Michigan, she's really turning the screws to them.
Right. She
And
is prosecuting them, right?
yep. And with these canvassers that refuse to sign the note in, what was it, Wayne County? Um, I I'm sure she would have enough to be like, you're gonna testify.
Well, and the thing about it is tell me if I've got this right or wrong because I don't know for sure. Donald Trump and Ronna McDaniel pressured those people not to sign the certification. Just go home and don't sign the certification. We'll pay for your lawyers. That's a
Right.
problem right there because it's saying we're going to give you something for doing something illegal. That is highly illegal. Now, is it true that they did exactly that? They did not sign off on this stuff?
Yes, they went home that night. They refused to sign it. They tried to retract their vote because they had already voted on it. They just refused to sign it, from my understanding. I might be missing something with that. And they tried to retract their yay vote to certify it. And our Supreme Court was like, no, you're not doing that.
Well, and it seems to me um, that if you signed a vote and then all of a sudden you want to retract that vote and not sign the certification, it sounds to me like you might be getting some pressure. But
Right.
who could possibly have enough power to pressure these canvassers to do something this stupid and expose themselves for their corruptness and their criminality? That could only be the president of the United States and the head of the RNC, Ronna
Right.
McDaniel. That kind of implicates Donald Trump pretty solidly in this thing over and above hearing his voice saying and committing the fucking crime.
Yeah. And and I could I couldn't imagine what these idiots were thinking and everything, because I remember I was listening to the podcast and they were saying what was going through their heads. Why were they hanging on to the phones when you were talking to Old Soul? And it's like, I think part of the reason they were hanging on to the phones is these people don't seem to understand technology in general or how it even works. They
Yeah,
probably thought that, oh, I can remove it, or I can just, it doesn't live there. It's not forever. And
right.
anybody who grew up on the internet knows the internet is forever.
Well, people have to understand too when we're talking about the fake electors, these canvassers, um, they aren't high-powered politicians. They aren't very wealthy business people. They aren't part of the elite. They're just dumb Joes like you and I. And
Right.
when the president calls you up and says, listen, I got this. I'm going to run over everybody with this. You're safe. Do what I tell you. It's not hard to imagine somebody, maybe as simple-minded as a Trump, will fuck to go, oh, okay, I'll have the president of the United States' favor in this thing, and of course I'll do it. They don't think about the ramifications. They don't even imagine any ramifications. They think they're doing the right thing because the president told them to do it. Now they're facing jail terms. This has got to fuck with a lot of normal people with a lot to lose. Got to fuck with their heads right about now.
Oh, yeah. And some of the people that are caught up in the fake electors here in Michigan, they have money, but not Donald Trump money or Rudy Giuliani kind of money.
Right,
They afford a nice house, maybe $1 million, $2 million home, but
right,
that's their assets and everything.
right.
So it, they can't afford to battle these things out, and if somebody can't afford it, they're gonna roll.
Well, you almost have to. I mean, say there's somebody not so different from me. We're not wealthy, but we're not poor. We're doing just fine. I'm 63 years old. It's one thing to have to hire a lawyer. It's another thing to make it pay a fine. But when they come to a guy like me and say, listen, motherfucker, you're going to jail, that's a whole nother level. You
Right.
have, I mean, I would roll on my mother if they said you got to go to jail for 10 years, Mike. I'm not going to see my family. I'm not going to see my grandchild. I'm going to roll, especially if
Especially
I
if,
was duped into the situation.
yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing. If you were the unwilling stooge at the end of the day and thinking, because I get it, president tells you to do something, that usually carries a lot of water and that means something. You do it.
Well, and the thing about it was is when he made that call, he was still technically the president.
Yep.
So I mean, how many times does somebody like you and I pick up the phone and go, "Holy shit, that's the president"? I mean, it's kind of like sexual harassment in the workplace. Somebody has ultimate authority over somebody else, coercing them to do something, whether they want to do it or not. In that respect, what Donald Trump did was abuse.
And given Donald Trump's entire history going back into the 80s, he's never changed his stripes. That's what I don't understand. Why all these people think he's smart. It's like we've known since the 80s he's a dumbass
Yeah. And I
and
think,
he's a drifter and a cheat.
and while we're on that topic, I think it's important. I like to input this every chance I get. Motherfucker smells like a sewer. He stinks. Flop sweat and shitty diapers. That's Donald Trump. And I only do that because I know that Trump-a-fucks and Donald Trump himself, there's nothing worse you can do to them than embarrass them. They try to do it to Joe Biden all the time, and it just doesn't work. But we know for a fact that Donald Trump shits his pants and he frequently smells wherever he goes. So, yeah, you've got the smelly kid in school who's your leader. Good luck with that. I wanted to bring something else up. Everybody's been talking about this 14th Amendment thing and taking Donald Trump off the ballot. And we know that Colorado has done it. The Supreme Court said we'll take him off the ballot. We're now waiting for the U.S. Supreme Court to kind of rule on that to see if they uphold that. Then yesterday we had, or the day before, Maine come out. The Secretary of State said we're taking him off the ballot. That's a little different situation. They have to go to the Superior Court, then to the state Supreme Court, ultimately the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, your state and my state have something in common. Uh, both our Supreme Courts have said, no, you can't take Donald Trump off the ballot. And I think people think this is the ultimate fail and Donald Trump is winning in all of this. There's a lot people don't understand. First of all, it's not talking about the general election, it's talking about the primary specifically. But over and above that, even though the Supreme Court did what they did, it's not over yet in Michigan or Minnesota for that matter. And I think the Supreme Courts in our respective states know that.
Yeah, and after they made that decision, I was nervous about it at first, but then after I read about it, like you said, it's only the primary vote, and in Michigan, if the RNC wanted to put up a ham sandwich legally, they're allowed to do it in Michigan.
Right,
Basically, they're allowed to put forth any name they want because it's an inter-party choice.
right. Well, and that's the other thing. People, and I've said this too. Uh, why does the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, have any jurisdiction over this when it is a state issue? I mean, we know the Republicans love to say, let the states decide, don't have the federal government. But in this case, they want the federal government to decide. They may be gambling pretty heavily here by doing that, but it seems like a state's issue. And I think what people don't understand too is that it went to the Supreme Court, it failed. They always think about the defense appealing to the Supreme Court, but the prosecution can do the same. They can appeal
Yep.
that decision, and they'd have to appeal it to the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, they're not going to do that. They're not going to do that up until the time that we know what the Supreme Court is going to do. If they hold up, hold up what the Colorado Supreme Court did, and they're going to give it a go ahead, then fucking states all around the country are going to start dropping Donald Trump's name off the ballot.
Yeah, and I do think that that's what's starting to happen with Maine joining in, and there's other states. I even heard something, it was only a headline. I didn't actually get a chance to read the article, but it was something about even Georgia looking at removing them. And it's like if a deep red purple state like Georgia is willing to start thinking about it, we're I think we're starting to see the dominoes fall. And I thought Old Soul's take on it was really interesting. And I do agree with her that we do need to crush them, but I see it from the aspect of we're just have like 400 different avenues all converging at the same point, and that's
Right.
to get this fucker out of our lives forever. So let's hit it from every angle and really get them.
The argument I would have for Old Soul, and she and I disagree on this a little bit, and that's fine. I certainly can be wrong. But if it was a normal situation and that was the best way to get the outcome we need, okay, I'm in for that. But we have a dumpster fire going here. Every day things get worse. Every day people are affected, damaged, maybe even hurt, and it could get worse as long as Donald Trump is in the mix. So, in spite of how it might be better or save us some troubles if we beat him in the election, I think it's kind of incumbent on us to get this fucker gone as quickly as possible, just for the sake of the country and the people in it. It may not be the best way to do it, according to Old Soul, or and I understand what she's saying. I agree with her, but
Yeah,
I think the urgency of this thing takes precedence over everything.
yeah, he needs to be put in a box and forgotten about. And I get the feeling that one of the things I hope actually ends up happening is it seems like Nikki Haley is making strides against Donald Trump in
Well,
the primary
up until yesterday,
up until the other day, right? But what she said more angers us on the left, people who know the truth. On the right, that's what they believe. So her saying that to a bunch of people who think like her isn't really out of the normal. It's just we get to see it and everybody gets to react to it.
yeah,
But if she can overtake them, that's good. Trump the fucks aren't going to vote for anybody else.
right.
At the end of the day, they're not.
Well, and that's an excellent point. Somebody made this point today. I was watching this, and I wanted to bring it up. It's something a little deeper than I thought about this. Um, we know if Donald Trump is the nominee, he's going to lose the presidential race. There's no way he can beat Joe Biden. I stand by that, and if I'm wrong, I'll take the shots, but I don't think I am. There's nothing that says he can beat Joe Biden or any other Democrat for that matter. But I also heard them talking about this. Somebody asked them if Donald Trump is not the nominee, what's plan B? And apparently they don't have plan B. So I got to thinking, why are they so all in on Donald Trump? Why are they committed to making Donald Trump the nominee when they know he's going to lose? And what you said is exactly the point. If Donald Trump is not the nominee, his base just will not vote. And
Yep.
people will say, who cares? Well, all the down ballot fucking people. that won't get votes because they're not voting for Donald Trump. They're not even looking to Donald Trump. I think it's a foregone conclusion he's going to lose, but they're going to take an ass whipping in the House and in the Senate and with governors and state legislators. If people just don't come out because Donald Trump isn't their guy, they're fucked. They have to have Donald Trump as the nominee.
because no matter what, us over here on the left, we're going out, we're voting, and I like when I flip through TikTok, I see a lot of young people saying the same thing and really pushing our narrative. It seems like we're finally getting a narrative on the left,
Right.
something we've been lacking for decades.
So I listened to I think it was a Gen Z talk to on TikTok, and they said, "Do you like Joe Biden?" And they said, "No, he's too old. I don't like a lot of things he's doing. No, I don't like Joe Biden for whatever reason. He may be wrong or right. I think a lot of people are misinformed about what's going on, but I understand the age thing." And then they said, "Will you then vote for Donald Trump? Or will you vote for Joe Biden?" And they said, "Yeah, I will vote for Joe Biden." "Well, if you don't like him, why would you vote for Joe Biden?" And he said, "Because the other guy's a lot fucking worse." And that's the point. I mean, it's one thing to say, I don't like Joe Biden, I'm not going to vote for him, but the alternative is so fucking bad. I don't believe people are going to choose Donald Trump over Joe Biden with the circumstances the way they are.
I don't think so either. Especially, it seems like Joe Biden does seem to be leaning a little more and more into dark Brandon,
Yeah,
and something I wish he would have done back in 2020, because you could see on the debate stage, all Biden had to do was push a few of Donnie's buttons, and he would have lost it right there on the stage, and freaking just went off the completely unhinged. And it's like, why didn't you turn that screw?
right.
Like
Well,
like just calling them dumb or something.
when Joe Biden won in 2020, and I admit I was wrong in this case, but there's some things that happened to cause it to be wrong. I said I don't think Joe Biden would run again in 2024 because of his age and because he came out and said, "I'm going to be a transitional president," meaning get away from Donald Trump and get onto a better track. And being a transitional president, that would that means to me one term. Well, now we know, of course, he's running in 2024, and he's explained that had Donald Trump not decided to run, he probably wouldn't have run. And if both those scenarios played out, that would have been probably the best news the Republicans could have had. But of course, Donnie Trump fucks it up again. But I understand what Joe Biden's saying. He's proven he can beat Donald Trump. He's done a good job as president. Yes, age is a factor, but at 82 years old, I don't want to work more. And I don't think he does either. But I think he really honestly believes that he needs to in order to save the country from the likes of Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think when he was saying that before the 2020 election, I think he was saying that I know these people in the Senate and the House, these established Republicans. We've worked together for a long time. He was probably thinking once he's gone, they would all come back to normal,
Right, right,
and tell McCarthy had to go down there and kiss his ass.
right. I think everybody thought that. I thought that. I thought as soon as he lost the race and he wasn't valuable to them anymore, they'd walk away from him. But
I I
fuck if they
especially
did.
thought it. I especially thought it once J6 happened. Once that happened, I thought that's done, because that you heard the speeches and it turns out they were just lip service at the
Right.
time.
Well,
And
it,
I
it
think that took a lot of respect away from a lot of people really quick.
yeah, it did. It did come off as a bridge too far. Maybe not with the Trump base, but the rest of the people going, "Huh, hold on." And then to double down and say it never happened. It was a peaceful protest. That's not helping their case at all. If they could say, "Yeah, it was horrible. We fucked up. Let's move on," it would have been a lot better off than just trying to deny it. We saw what happens when you have a problem in this country and you deny it and you ignore it and you neglect it. We saw that with COVID, and 1 million Americans died. You would think once that happened, you would learn a lesson and not do it again, but they did.
Yep, I wonder if they're masochists sometimes because they seem to really be liking getting beat up because they go on, you see them go on TV and everything. They just sound so stupid and so out of touch. And like Lindsey Graham was just on TV the other day saying that the Republicans are the party that stays out of everybody's business. It's like, since when?
Yeah, please explain to me how that's the case when you overturn Roe v. Wade, take constitutional rights away from women, and you threaten to charge them with murder if they take care of their bodily medical problems. Yeah,
And to tell transgender people or people in the LGBT community that they can't get married, they can't transition, they can't be happy with who they are.
right, right. Um, why that fucking matters, I don't know.
And
People are so,
and
people want their privacy about their personal life, but when it comes to LGBTQ and that sort of stuff, they want their nose right in the middle of it. And I can't understand it. That's why I told somebody one time when they were ranting about LGBTQ, I turned it around on them and I said, "What do you do in the bedroom? What kind of crazy, kinky shit do you do?" And they said, "It's none of your business." I go, "That's my fucking point. It's none of our business. It's none of
yeah,
your
it's
business."
like the people down in Florida, the Zigglers. I mean, she was obviously bisexual since she's enjoying physical relations with a woman. And everybody knows Lindsey Graham, he's so deep in the closet, he's finding old Christmas presents, but we know, we can tell. It's
Well,
just
when we've talked to Maddie before, we've uh, let you know that Maddie is transgender, and the matters not to me. I have a good conversation with you, and I'll be honest with you, whether you were a man or a woman, I'm not thinking about your sex life. I'm
right.
just not. It doesn't matter
And
what's
if you
going on.
were, I would ask a lot. I'd be like, "What the hell's wrong with you?" It's
Right, right,
like,
exactly. And there would be something wrong. Now there was some news yesterday, and I'm sure you heard about it. Uh, Governor Mike DeWine of Ohio became the only second Republican to ever veto a bill that would ban gender affirming care for minors. He made his decision after traveling to the children's hospitals and talking to families that would be affected. He basically said, I just can't sign that bill. So he vetoed it. Does something like that surprise you, or do you think people are finally feeling the pressure and the ignorance of this whole thing?
my only question with it all has been, do they have a super majority?
Yeah, good point.
Because if they have a super majority, then he's just doing it for political points.
Oh, yeah. I'm just looking at the article here. I'm not seeing that. Let me just check.
Because if they have a veto proof majority, then I don't trust it.
Yeah, it's kind of like the guy in Tennessee, the Republican governor down there.
Right.
They had that big shooting, and he said, "Well, yeah, I think we should look at some kind of gun control." And I thought, well, that's great. You know, the guy's going to do the right thing. Maybe it finally hit home with him. And then we quickly realized it was never going to happen because of the Republican legislature in Tennessee. And this is one of my big problems with politicians, whether it be Nikki Haley not being able to say slavery or, the governor in Tennessee. We hear these people talk and they seem so sincere about it. But it seems like everything that comes out of any politician's mouth isn't sincere, isn't what they believe, it's just what they think is politically expedient to them. And that's troubling that we can't get a straight answer from our politicians who we pay.
Yeah, I was actually just having a conversation with my mom uh, right around Christmas, and she said something that rang in my mind was we were talking about Social Security because they live on Social Security now.
Right.
And I was talking about how all these Republicans are trying to take away Social Security and trying to make it harder and not give you as much money and all that other stuff.
Right.
And she said, I've never heard any of them run on that. I'm like, you can't listen to what they run on. You have to
Well,
listen, you have to see what how they vote.
right. And even if they don't run on it, we know it's an issue. We know they brought it up. All you have to do is read a little or watch TV. Doesn't matter if they ran on it, if they still intend to do it. I mean, they didn't run on marginalizing LGBTQ folks either. They
Right.
don't. They didn't run on racism. They didn't run on all this stuff. That's the point. They run on the stuff that dumb people listen to, and then they slip this shit in the back door. So
Right.
you got to be smarter than that.
And
I'm assuming you slapped her, right?
oh, it was over the phone.
Oh well.
But it actually turned out to be a really good conversation because I started getting it seemed like I was starting to land a few good points and she was starting to ask questions about things and because she was saying that um we were originally talking about people coming across the border and she was like, "Did you know they let in X number of thousand people across the border?" I was like, "You do realize that's everybody, not just immigrants. That's people who work across the border. That's anybody who comes through a port of entry across the
Right.
southern border is counted in that number. That's
Right.
not just immigrants looking for asylum." And she's like, "Oh, I didn't know that." I'm
And
like,
did you know that this problem has been there for decades and decades and decades for Republican and Democratic presidents, and none of them have really done anything. And the reason they haven't done anything is because when the Democrats are in control and want to do something, in spite of the fact that the Republicans bitch about it all the time, they'll block anything the Democrats say just because they don't want the Democrats to look good. This is They don't want the problem fixed. It's like the way Roe v. Wade had been for decades and decades. But that dog caught that car. Now they don't know what the fuck to do.
"Yep." And I knew something like that was going to happen the second it was Roe v. Wade was overturned. It's like you guys don't know what you just bit off
Yeah.
because a lot of people who I know a lot of people who are like, I don't agree with it as a form of birth control, but I'm not in that person's position.
Right. Right.
I don't know what they're going through. They, I can't make that decision for them.
I don't like the idea of hearing about an abortion. I mean, I don't like hearing about it. But the real sticking point for me is a woman's choice to do what she wants with her body. And the reason that's so important to me is because I'm trying to imagine me being in the same position. What if the politician came to me and said, "Mike, you, you may need this, but you can't do it"? I'd be fucking pissed. And
Right.
women in this country are rightfully pissed. And it's not working out well for the Republicans. These people are pissed and they are going to come out in full force and they are going to bury the Republicans, not unlike what they did in 2022.
Right. And like, that's the other part that people don't get. It's like, it's the freedom to choose what you do with your body. That extends into so many other areas. That's the
Oh, yeah.
freedom for me to choose what to do when I transition. It's the freedom to get a tattoo, to pierce your ear, to do anything you want to your body because it's yours to do with what you please.
Or have your tonsils out.
Right.
If the rich insurance lobby tells the Republicans, God, the tonsil thing is really costing us a lot of money. Let's cut that out. You really don't have to do it. And that's the point too. Anytime you have somebody in the politics take away a constitutional right, if you think that's the only and last time they're going to do it, you're fucking kidding yourself because it may not be something that matters to you now, but ultimately it will affect you. And then it'll be too late to bitch about it because you were okay with it the first time around.
Yeah, like if that I haven't really heard one way or another confirmation if that person in Texas was a pro-life person.
Old Soul says she was. She was a
Well, I
pro-life person.
believe Old Soul.
I do too. Yeah,
And it, but that's the perfect example that you it don't it only seems to bother them when it affects them. And
right.
I don't understand how people can live like that, how you can be devoid of any form of empathy.
Yeah. And then feel like they need to have special treatment or different treatment when it happens to them. And see that's where the problem for the Democrats are. Um, this isn't just a Democratic problem. 70% of the people, 75% of the people support Roe v. Wade. And a lot of those people are Republicans. Now, for me, I'm not going to have a baby. The abortion issue probably isn't a direct concern of mine, maybe for my kids. Um, but these young people, the millennials, the Gen Zs, this is about their future. They don't know what's going to happen. This woman who was all pro life and stuff never imagined in her wildest dreams that she might be in medical trouble because she's pregnant. She fucked around, she found out, and now she needs some help. And she's probably regretting some of the things she did. And I think a lot of these young people are seeing we got a bunch of old white people going to take away a right that doesn't even matter to them anymore. That's bullshit.
Yeah, and I that that poor woman, your heart really goes out to her. And because my question's always been, when she are they going to attempt to try her now in Texas when she gets back? We don't know because they worded those laws so loosely. They might be try her for manslaughter or something or
Well,
murder.
well, and the thing is, if she thinks she's going to be tried or prosecuted for this, does she even go back? And now we're looking at something totally different. We've got somebody who ends up being exiled from their home state, from their home, simply because some religious right fucks don't think they should have rights over their own body. That's appalling. That's so un-American. I can't even fucking imagine.
Yeah, I I can't imagine that either. I mean, I was in the military very briefly, but I still hold the oaths that I took to protect and defend our people and our Constitution.
Right.
How these people who claim to love it all so much can just spit on it all, and it's sickening, really.
Well, it's like people I've known, whether they're taking money from you or power from you or whatever they're doing, they may know in their heart of hearts that it's wrong. But when somebody wants something, is so greedy that they want something that bad, they will find a way to rationalize it. And the way they're rationalizing it is it's against God, so that trumps everything. No pun intended. And that's one of the things I'm getting tired of. I'm getting tired of people who are the least or the most hypocritical standing behind a shield of God or the Bible or whatever. It's just absolute bullshit. They have no clue what they're doing. They're taking whatever they learned from the Bible and they pervert it to fit their narrative. And that makes them a fucking hypocrite.
And what's really sad about it too is most of these people don't even know what's in the Bible.
Oh,
They know a passage here, a passage there. Like they say about a woman should be subservient to her husband. It's in
now see
Timothy.
that one I'm feeling pretty good about. Wait a minute. I think she's asleep, so we're good.
But then they completely ignore the next verse that talks about and a man should love and protect his wife as he would his faith.
Right.
And I've had many conversations with people who are standing on the corner preaching their good word who, when you ask them questions like, what about when Jesus said you should pray in silence in the closet and do it amongst yourselves? You should not. pray in public like the Pharisees, they're like, well, you're just misunderstanding it. It's like, tell
Of
me you haven't
course.
read your own book.
Yeah, of course. Of course. That's what I'm saying. They just take whatever they want and they say, well, it's in the Bible or God said this. And we're supposed to stand back and go, oh, shit. You get to lie. You get to spew bullshit because you invoke God. Sorry, I'm not that fucking guy. I'm not going to do that. Uh, we're talking to Maddie on the Rational Boomer podcast. We are going to take a quick break and we will be right back. We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. We have listener Maddie with us on the program today, and it's always good to have her with us. She has some great insights, and there's nothing I love better than a good conversation, which I get all the time with listeners who come on the show, or Ed, or Old Soul, or whoever comes on the show. It's always a good conversation, and it allows me to get some perspectives from the folks that are listening, because to me that's as important as anything that I would have to say. I just kind of boil things down. I see what I see and I say what I say. That doesn't make me right all the time, and thankfully there are people to point that out, and I have no problem with it. um, I read an email yesterday, I think it was Maddie, about this, I think his name is Mike Z. Mike Z wrote the letter. And he was talking about this friend of his that he claims to be a Democrat, and he knows all of what's going to happen. Things are going bad for Joe Biden, so Donald Trump will win, and it'll be bad for a while, but we'll get it out of our. He was really having a fatalistic attitude about what's to come in the 2024 election. And when I hear that, it pisses me off because it just sounds so fatalistic, as if you're not paying attention to any of the facts, that you're one of these people that say, well, we're going to lose, it's inevitable, let's just give up. And I hate that attitude. I hate that attitude. There's one specific thing that's going on that's going to be potentially devastating to Donald Trump, and that is his appeal to the Supreme Court regarding his complete and full immunity of everything, everywhere. People are sitting there clutching their pearls and saying, oh my God, I hope the Supreme Court doesn't side with him. And they'll say, well, he's got the six judges, the three he put in there, they're just going to side with them. What they don't remember is that the Supreme Court has not sided with him a number of times because of what was being brought to them was so ridiculous. And I was saying to you before we went on, and I think you agree, the idea that anybody could find Donald Trump completely immune from everything is just absolutely ridiculous. Not even the Supreme Court on their drunkest day, loving Donald Trump on the best day of loving Donald Trump, would agree to giving him that immunity.
No, because if the if like you said, on their drunkest, bingiest night,
Yeah,
they chose to do something like that, it would create such a constitutional crisis because then it would mean Joe Biden is immune from everything at
right,
that point. Barack Obama, and they're always like, throw him in prison. It's like, well, you can't anymore because you just fought to get him immunity.
right.
But they're so short sighted that they only see, well, this will only affect Trump. It's like, no, if they did that, it affects every president. And the way he wants to have it, it seems like every person even running.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, even if he got this immunity and he got out of some of his trials, he's still going to lose in 2024. So now you give Joe Biden another 4 years with the immunity to do whatever the
Right.
fuck he wants. He could just outlaw the Republican Party with no
Yep.
ramifications at all. The whole thing is totally ridiculous. The frightening thing for Donald Trump has to be knowing that this is not going to be found in his favor, and this is essentially a large part of his defense strategy, not only in that case, but all the cases. Once they strike that down and there's no way to go to appeal it again, He's fucked in these trials.
Yeah, I think the way his shit covered brain is thinking, um, he's probably thinking once the Supreme Court's going to grant him immunity, and once he has immunity, he's going to then win 2024 because they can't go after him anymore. He's going to win the next election, and then the game's over because
That
he'll never leave.
and that strategy and that concept is crazier than my Minnesota Vikings winning the division this year with their current record and going on to win the Super Bowl uh, by a landslide. I mean, it's not going to happen. It can't happen. And Donald Trump has got hope against hope that he'll get the win in the presidency and he'll be able to save himself. That's his only strategy. That's the best he can hope for. And the moment he realizes that that's not possible, I don't know what's going to happen with that fucking head, but I know what's going to happen below the waist, and it's going to evolve a lot of excrement.
Yeah, once that happens, it, I mean, you could see by his tweets and his posts and everything, he's getting closer and closer to that point. He
Yeah,
is
he is.
he's running scared. He doesn't know what the fuck he's doing anymore. And he's throwing his diapers like a freaking monkey on speed.
And he still stinks. He stinks
Yes.
horribly. Um, yeah. It,
But
go ahead.
I this is what he's trying to do would be, like you said, a Hail Mary from one end zone on a field in Buffalo, New York, and landing it in the other end zone in LA.
Right, right. It's that outrageous. But still, there are people out there, Democrats or people who claim to be Democrats, still have this fatalistic view. Oh no, somehow Donald Trump is going to get out of this. Somehow, some way he's going to get out of this. And he's got 91 felony charges with two district attorneys that have a conviction rate of 98%. I mean, you work in casinos. Where would you bet with those kinds of odds that he gets at least one conviction?
Oh, I mean, with those odds, he's something's going to happen. This his immunity is literally his only way out because even his whole defense has been, I'm just immune. He's never flat out said I didn't do it. It's
Right.
all a lie. He's just said I'm allowed to do it.
Yeah, he said that about the classified documents too. And therein lies the real problem for him. He claims immunity, never denying that he did it. Once immunity, that rug is pulled out from under him. He's fucked because he's pretty much admitted he's committed the crimes that he's no longer immune for.
Yeah, and if the Supreme Court has already decided he can be tried civilly, which is a far lower bar to clear than criminally,
Oh, yeah.
why would they say he could be tried civilly but not criminally? It it's counterintuitive to everything I know of law, and that's not very much.
Right. Right.
But my wife, she has a degree in legal research, and she's even said, "Yeah, that's not going to happen."
No, it's not. And I think a lot of people are, when the Supreme Court said, yeah, we're not going to hear it real fast, we're going to wait. Everybody thought, oh, Donald Trump won. He's going to delay it till past the election. What they didn't take into account is that the appellate court will hear it on the 9th or the 11th or something. They'll come up with a quick decision. It'll immediately go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court understands the time sensitivity of all this and will get an answer from them because it is so ridiculous. So the amount of time that Donald Trump will have delayed this, maybe 2 weeks, maybe a month, but even if it's 2 months, it's still going to end well before the election. So I don't know why people are freaking out or upset.
Yeah, the way I see it actually going down is, yeah, it's going to push his trial date back a little bit. I get that feeling. And when it comes to the Supreme Court, and when he appeals it to the Supreme Court, they could just say, no, we're not taking it.
Right, exactly. And that's
With,
probably
with
what they do.
I mean, especially given their publicity that they've had lately, they might just be like, nope, we're not even going to touch it. It's not even worth our time to touch it.
Well, they've tried to sell some things that are pretty ridiculous, the Supreme Court. But this is far and away more ridiculous than anything they've ever heard. I mean, this is Donald Trump flailing, trying to say anything. It's like when they go to the court in New York and ask to have it dismissed 20 times, in spite of the fact that the judge has already found him liable. I don't know what they're trying to dismiss. So he thinks the judge is going to dismiss a case he's already decided? Do they
Right.
not
He's
realize they're just talking about the money and not the guilt of this whole? It's just amazing. It strikes me as these lawyers should be smarter than that. And I think they are. I think it's just that Donald Trump has pressured them so much to do his bidding that they're willing to do stupid shit. And I don't know why.
Yeah, it seems like they're just willing, like with Lena Haba, it's I think it was Old Soul said she's just doing that for herself. She's trying to she's looking at that bigger, better deal beyond Donald Trump and trying to make her bones and everything. But it's not going to work because she's hitched her cart to the wrong
Well, exactly.
horse.
As I've said, some people will take cases and not make much money for the publicity's sake. I don't think she's liking the publicity sake here. Old Soul brought up a story, and I heard it again yesterday, so I'm interested in it. But I should never question Old Soul. And I mean this in all the respectful terms. She's a researching motherfucker,
Yes, she is.
and she is smart. And I frequently feel a little dumber every time I talk to her, but I'm glad I have her on the program because she's a big help and offers some great information.
Next time out in Vegas, I would love to have dinner with her.
Oh, she's a great lady. Um, I told my wife she hadn't met Old Soul or heard anything of her, and I said, honey, we're gonna get together for lunch with Old Soul, and she goes, somebody from the internet. I go, yeah, just trust me on this. You'll like her. You'll like her a lot. And so we go, and if my wife doesn't like somebody or she doesn't like something I pulled her into, I'm gonna hear about that shit. But as soon as we got in the car to go to the airport, she couldn't say enough good about Old Soul. Everything you see on the podcast, that is her, and they connected on a different level. We talk about politics, but both Old Soul and my wife have a deep interest in true crime on television, on podcast, on radio. Trust me, I listen to it all the time when we're in the car together. I'm going, Jesus Christ. Uh, how many times do you have to listen to somebody murdering their wife or husband or boyfriend? We sit and listen to these things, and I go, I know it's happened already. It's obvious. But they connected on that level, and my wife loves Old Soul, and trust me, she's looking for reasons to think to make me look stupid. So I won that one, and thanks to Old Soul for being who she is. Uh, so I've said all along that I don't think he'll be the nominee, um, in spite of what Old Soul is thinking, and I respect what she says, and she may be right. Either way, that's the one thing I look at this. No matter how this goes down, Donald Trump gets taken out on the 14th Amendment. He goes to jail for some of his criminal charges, or he gets his ass beat in the general election. It really doesn't matter because he doesn't have a good path in any of those situations. None of them are helpful for him because ultimately he can't win the general election. So I'm not as worried as a lot of people are about Donald Trump becoming president. I don't see how that's possible.
And when it comes to his J6 trial coming up, say it gets pushed back a month or two, that's just pushing the trial that much closer to the election and keeping it right in everybody's ear to remind everybody what a piece of shit he is. And if they've already started hitching their cart to him, they're going off the rails with him at the second he gets convicted.
Right. Well, and the other thing too is um, people forget about this one because it's not as egregious as some of the others, but it is still felony charges. Alvin Bragg has said if they push this back 2 months, cool. I'll be able to start the Manhattan district case in March then. Because they've
Right.
been going at this a lot longer than anybody else. So Donald Trump may be able to push the J6 thing out, but then Alvin Bragg will hop in. And basically, somebody was on the show was saying in March, when he starts going to trial, the way things line up, he'll literally be in court almost every day up until the election. How do you run a campaign if you have no money, you can't pay your legal fees, and you're in court every day? How does he run for the presidency?
You don't.
No, you
I
don't.
mean, the only way a person could do something like that would be they would have to be basically awake 24/7. And granted, I'm sure you can get enough cocaine and Adderall to do that,
Yeah. And he doesn't have to
but
waste time going to the bathroom.
right. But doing something like that would kill him. And I might take some ire, but I'm always like, I don't want him to die
No,
because
no.
I see if he chooses to step away, or if he dies or becomes incapacitated and can't, that would be worse than anything because then he will, in essence, not legally or anything, but in essence, he would win because then he could be held up as a martyr rather
Right.
than the albatross.
Right. And frankly, I've said too is if he gets convicted and sentenced to jail, I hope that motherfucker lives a long and healthy life up to 150 because he needs to pay a price. Dying ahead of going to jail would just be a typical easy out for Donald Trump. He was a draft
Mm-hmm.
dodger. He took the easy way out and everything. He buried companies and dad bailed him out. He's been nothing but bailed out all his life. He needs at least one moment in his life where he pays the price and he's accountable for the shit he does.
Yeah, if he's going to Adderall himself into a coma, I could see him doing it after he gets starts getting those guilties
Yeah. Yeah.
potentially, but not before.
No, I don't. Well, some other people have said, what about suicide? Donald Trump is a narcissist. You'll never find a narcissist to commit suicide. Why would they do away with the one person they think is the greatest person on the face of the earth? And they're cowards on top of it. So they
Right.
aren't going to take that way out. Donald Trump seems to think no matter what he does, what he says, there's always a way he can work his way out of it. He
I could
won't
only
he won't
I could
believe it
only
any other way until that door locks behind him in jail, and then he's going to
right.
have to deal with reality.
I could only see like an accidental overdose or something because I I wouldn't put it past them to, well, I'm going to jail. I might as well freaking have one last good ride and
Yeah. Well,
have it be too much.
or I could see accidentally on purpose Melania rekindling the marriage and helping him out with his doses. I mean,
I saw their Christmas photo and they're not together.
no, they're not together. And you look at Melania, and while she's an attractive woman, there's something nasty about her. And I'm not talking about sexually nasty. She's like the Eastern European people that you see as villains in movies all the time.
The
She kind of got that look that she'd cut your throat if she had a chance.
the Natasha from Boris and Natasha, Rocky and
Exactly.
Bullwinkle.
Exactly. Exactly. She's not unlike that at all. But
And when you see her, you can see, unlike Donald, she's smart. She speaks multiple languages. She's
She's
smart in a conniving way.
yeah, yeah. She's not smart in a good way. If nothing else, she's certainly smarter than Donald. But
Right.
that could be virtually anybody. I think she is. I would guess she's smart. She is conniving. The only reason she would marry Donald Trump had to be for ulterior motives and being conniving. She didn't do it
Yeah.
because he's a great guy and good looking and smells great. It's not that reason. So in a sense, she's kind of an opportunist too. And you have
Oh
to
yeah.
question her decision making if she was so enamored with money and fame and luxury that she was willing to give up her best years to a dipshit like Donald Trump. That's you got to question the decisiveness about that woman.
Right. And hell, I would wonder if maybe Barron was done through in vitro so she wouldn't have to touch him.
Yeah, yeah. Well, even if she did have it conceive him the natural way, I think she looked at it as you're not, for those people that are listening in the morning that are having breakfast, I apologize. Um, I apologize for the imagery we're throwing around here, but but that might have been part of her conniving too. It's one thing to have been married to him. She needed to have some kind of offspring that tied her to him permanently and was more of a reason to get more money out of his ass. I hope she got the money ahead of time because there ain't going to
Oh
be
yeah.
much left.
No, that money is going away quick. I mean, I just heard today that the judge Engeron
Yeah.
had to be evacuated
Yeah.
and they've arrested assailant. I don't remember if it was guns or bomb threats or what it was, but it I don't understand why these people think that's going to magically stop everything. These people have tried war criminals and real mobsters, people that have actually killed people. You think
Right.
these low life redneck idiots who are cosplay patriots are actually scare these people?
Yeah. No. Yeah. I agree. And the thing about it is that decision's going to come down within a couple of weeks. We know he's
Right.
already guilty of it. It's just a matter of how much money. But it almost doesn't matter because if it's 250 million or 500 million or a billion, it might as well be 100 billion. He doesn't have the money and he's going to have to sell off properties, but those properties are probably well leveraged too. So the amount of equity in these properties is pretty small, probably, or not as much as the whole value of the property. So that means he's going to have to sell off a lot of properties. When this is
Yes.
done, he's going to be cleaned out.
Oh yeah. And I mean, yeah, he's a once if he liquidated everything, I would say that there would be easily enough money in the properties, but it's not his choice really to liquidate because everything's in I
Receivership,
mean,
yeah.
yeah, everything's in receivership. So if it liquidates, that's not his choice how much it gets liquidated for, or who buys it, or what they do with it. And Mar-a-Lago and all the properties he lives at are all owned by these companies. He
In New
doesn't own
York.
anything.
Right.
Yeah. And once they start having to liquidate everything, he might be able to negotiate and please let me stay for a while, but they could be like, no, hit the bricks, dude.
Well, and people are under the impression that if he owes this money, then Donald will do what he does and cut deals, the art of the deal, and he'll come out on top of this. Like you say, he's in receivership. So basically, the receivership says, okay, we owe 250 million or 500 million. They're the ones that are going to be liquidating the shit. If there's enough to do it, again, it has to do with how much equity there's in these things because knowing Donald Trump, he's probably got a lot of a lot of mortgage money going into these properties. And
Yeah.
so they'll sell them off and they'll pay back whatever is owed to the court. And then Donnie Trump will be handed whatever's left, if there's anything left. So Donnie Trump has no control, which is going to drive him nuts because he's a control freak as well.
And if the properties in receivership are found to be properties gained through ill-gotten means that the whole point of the trial, those could just be taken,
Right,
seized
right.
because you got these illegally, so you don't own these anymore.
And how many of those properties that he has? Granted, he has a lot of properties. How many of those properties do you think he did perfectly above board and without any shenanigans? I'm thinking zero.
Maybe something back in the 70s.
Yeah, well, he's probably bankrupted that shit by now. So I don't know. I don't know. But I've said all along, everybody's waiting for the criminal trials, the 14th Amendment, all those stuff. Couple of weeks, we're going to find out how much he owes. I think that may be as devastating a decision as there's going to be. I mean, I think once his money's taken away, when he goes to trial, it's going to be like kicking a puppy. He's going to
Yeah,
have nothing. He's not even going to be able to afford legal representation. I mean, because he's paid them a lot of money up front, but these lawyers are some busy motherfuckers. They're in court all the time. Eventually, that retainer is going to run out. And lawyers are going to say, well, no money, I'm gone. And and when that happens, he's not going to have the options he has. Because I got to tell you, I don't know how what well he did with those NFTs and the swatches of his suit from his mugshot. I don't think it's enough to cover his legal fees from now until 2024. It's just not enough.
I don't think it was enough to cover his legal fees for the month after he sold them.
Right, right.
He's burning through money so fast that nobody could keep. I think if even if he had the money of say close to a Musk or something, the at the speed he's burning through with all these trials, even that fortune would go away pretty quick.
And as he's doing this, it sounds like he's continually committing crimes because he's taking money out of PACs to pay legal fees, which is illegal. That PAC money is supposed to go to the campaign. So if he's taking the money out of the PACs to pay the legal fee, it's potentially illegal, potentially another indictment. Plus, he's got no money to run the fucking campaign. He's going to do rallies in shithole parts of the state because he's still got police departments on his ass for not paying the first time around in 2020. He's 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 one of those guys. I've known them. I almost ended up this way too. There are these guys who live high on the hog and they don't make a lot of money, but there's a constant flow so they can keep things balanced. But when that flow is disrupted, they start to spiral and ultimately they crash, no matter who it is. Once the cash flow stops or slows down and you can't balance it, you're fucked. And that's where he is right now. He's not collecting as much money as he was from his base. They're fucking running out of money. Jesus Christ. They're not
And
the wealthiest crowd, and the wealthy people are backing away from them.
and the people who oversee the companies right now, they're not letting him just take however much money he wants. He just got in trouble for not reporting what was it, 5 million he took
Right, right.
from, but I'm betting he's to the point too with it all. It's like, what's another crime?
Yeah. And that's what people do when they get desperate. They do virtually anything. Uh, they'll say, "I'll worry about that when I have to worry about it." And he might be wise to do that because with all the shit hanging over his head, these campaign campaign crimes are minuscule compared to everything else. Nobody's even worried about that. But there was a time I would imagine that Donald Trump, before the receivership, if he found himself in this position, would go to one of his properties, inflate the value, go to a bank and say, I want $50 million, and he'd probably get it.
Yep.
You can't do that anymore. It's not an option.
Yeah. And people were like, for a long time, the only bank that would do any work with them was Deutsche Bank. And everybody knew Deutsche Bank was in tight with different mafias around the world and everything. They ran a lot of dark money. And yeah, when the only person you can get a loan from is a loan shark,
Right.
you're in desperate straits.
And you have to understand too that even Deutsche Bank said enough. We're not borrowing Donald Trump any more money. So there is no bank in the world that's willing to loan Donald Trump money because he's a bad risk. So if he does get an influx of money like he has in the past, it can only come from some country like a Saudi Arabia or Russia. The problem is he's under the microscope now, and when that does happen, everybody's going to know.
Yeah, because if he got a sudden influx of money, everybody would know because he wouldn't be able to keep his mouth shut about it.
Oh no, no.
He'd be like, "Oh, I'm flushed with cash again," and everybody's gonna be like, "How?"
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you
And
didn't find all of the classified documents, and I sold a couple.
well, you go back, was it the 80s or the 90s when it looked as though he was all but destroyed? He had the bankruptcies, he had all the stuff going on, and it looked like there was no way out for him. And we knew that banks weren't really loaning him money, but all of a sudden he was flush and he was back on top again. As much as he wants to say Russia, 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 I guarantee you that money came from Russia. And it was enough to bail him out. Now, as Donald Trump runs out of money, last motherfuckers I want to call up and say, hey, Vlad, you know, I'm a little short this month or this decade. I'm not going to be able to pay you. In terms of Donald Trump's mortality, I'm more worried about Russian mafia, Vladimir Putin, and the Mossad because they don't
Yeah,
fuck around. They don't fuck around. They will
no,
go to other countries to do their dirty work.
yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if something like that happened, that we would see him take a header out of a window.
Well, there was another just recently, a day or so ago. There was another uh, uh, Vladimir Putin advisor slipped out a window. It's amazing. There's an epidemic of people slipping out of windows in
Isn't it winter there? Why is everybody leaving their windows wide open?
exactly. And you know, if I'm Anderson Windows in this country here, I'm thinking all those shitty windows in Russia, I'd get a branch over there because there's going to be some business.
And if he was trying to call up Vlad for some money too, Vlad's dealing with his own shit right now.
Well, he is. And the only reason Vlad would give him money is if there was some value in it for him. And Donald Trump, in his current state, offers no value to Vladimir Putin. I wouldn't be surprised if Vlad doesn't even take his fucking phone call.
Yeah. I mean, they Vladimir Putin has been on record even saying, yeah, they've been grooming him since the 90s.
Right.
And right about the time he got back on top
Right.
was right about the time they started grooming him.
And it was right about the time when Don Jr. said, "Oh yeah, we get all kinds of money from Russia." I mean, as
Right.
much as they say it doesn't happen, it didn't happen. All facts point to that exactly happening.
Oh yeah. And I don't when I look at everything, I even wonder if Vlad's the top of the food chain. I don't think he is either.
Yeah, you wonder. You wonder. There are. I mean,
I think it,
he is a vicious dictator, so he may be, but you know, when it comes down to it, it's all about money. And they say Vlad's got a shitload of money.
and the only reason I question if Vlad's the top of the food chain was just because it's usually the toughest, loudest person is the smoke screen for the real person behind the scenes pulling the string.
True. True.
the people who really pull the strings are the quiet ones in the shadows, and you never know what they're about to do. And
Yeah, that's
I could
true.
see, I could see Xi Jinping in that position.
Yeah, he's younger, healthier. Um, and, as an Asian leader, you look at the guy and you think, oh, he seems like a good guy. No, that's a vicious motherfucker.
Yeah,
And yeah, he's a problem.
he still has enough respect on the world stage to be the Darth Sidious in the background.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Donald Trump is, like I said before, he's at the point where he's spiraling, going to crash. He's trying to juggle everything, and everything has dropped off the table for him as far as money coming in and going out and stuff. And now he's not going to know what to do. Actually, at some point, if he's dealing with problems with Russia and Israel and the Mossad and even Saudi Arabia for that matter, he may welcome the opportunity to be in jail in isolation because that may be the only way to save him.
Who knows? Him being a former president and having Secret Service might be the only thing keeping them from doing anything.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I mean, I think the telling point will be if he's not in jail as yet and Donald Trump doesn't win in 2024, he becomes expendable, not only to the Republican Party, but to any of his friends overseas with adversarial countries. Um, because he's a risk. Um, he's a loudmouth, and if he thinks these people aren't helping him, he's going to expose a lot of people around the world and in this country that don't want to hear that shit come out. I am worried about that because I think you're right. If Donald Trump were to die before the election or before being convicted, a lot of people would make him out to be a martyr, and that would be a shame.
Yeah, and when it comes to these other countries, he could eventually become, I could see him becoming persona non grata, like
Oh,
with all of them. And they're all like, no, we're not having anything to do with him. And I could see them needing to find a way to keep his mouth shut because he does know all the contents that got hacked with the RNC,
oh, absolutely, absolutely.
just like he knew the DNC. I mean, everybody's remembers the DNC got hacked, and that's because it got leaked. But the RNC got hacked at the same time, and they've just been kind of sitting on that. And all of a sudden, here comes this person that close ties with Russia, the people we know hacked the RNC, and everybody's bowing to them.
Right, right, exactly. That is weird and troubling. Um, Now, when Donald Trump loses in 2024 and he becomes a liability to everyone, this is when Donald Trump is going to go through some shit, even before he goes to jail. Um, People only stuck with him because they saw him as having a little bit of power when it comes to fundraising and it comes to elections and getting votes. Um, but the only reason why Vladimir Putin probably hasn't flushed him down the toilet or dropped him out a window as yet is because just in case he might win in 2024. Because if that happens, then Vlad's got the greatest day in his life. He's got a puppet in Washington D.C. as president of the United States. Now he can do whatever the fuck he wants. But the moment that election is over and Donald Trump has no future, at best Vlad's going to cut him off and just toss him to the side. At worst,
Yeah,
it could get ugly.
yeah, and because I do think I always go back to it. I think when he lost in 2020, the reason he did everything he did was because he knew he would never get another shot.
Right, right. He was too
Because
old and too damaged.
And I think Russia pushed them to it also because they knew they would never get another shot. They needed another 4 years for their plan. And I think that's why the entire invasion of Ukraine has been weird and not very coordinated. And you're seeing all the stuff with Israel and Hamas kicking off again, and all the strife in these different locations. You're hearing about down in South America, there's talk of war, and
In China and
but it all,
Taiwan.
yeah, and but it all seems very disjointed
Right.
rather than if they had that other 4 years, they might have been able to cohese it all together in one slam, but we kind of screwed them up.
What we did, the Democratic voters, people were scared of Donald Trump. They went out in mass and voted Donald Trump out. I really believe that they voted Donald Trump out more than they voted Joe Biden in. Just so happens that Joe Biden gets in, and he does a lot of shit in spite of what other people think that he's done nothing. But he's done a lot of shit. Maybe the most productive president, Democratic president anyway, in history. Yet he doesn't get credit for it. And people keep saying that he doesn't get credit for it. People think the economy's bad when the economy's actually pretty good. Um, I really think it stems from the rhetoric coming from the Republican Party. We know how well they do with carrying the narrative, and it gets out there, and then a media source says, "Oh, this is what I heard," and then some media source says, "Here, this is what I heard," and somebody reads a headline or hears a tagline on TV, and they think it's absolute truth. I think a lot of what we're seeing with polls and all this talk about millennials not liking Joe Biden because of Israel, I think it's all a bunch of shit, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah, I think when it comes to millennials and Gen Z not liking Biden, I think what some of them are asking is, do you like Joe Biden? And when they say no, they're just taking that. It's like,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that they're gonna not vote for him because even in 2020, voting for him wasn't voting for the lesser of two evils. It was voting between evil and some degree of normalcy.
Right.
And yeah, the White House doesn't put out as much information, but I think a lot of people forget when we were in the Trump years, that was not normal. How
No.
much Trump put everything out there. That is not normal. And Biden is more the way it was before.
Right.
And yeah, that might not be the greatest anymore in our given technological climate and connection with each other and everything. And he might be doing himself a disservice by not leaning more into it. But again, he's old.
Yeah, he's very old, and that is the most troubling part of this. This is the concern I had when he ran in 2020. I thought he was too old. Um,
And
well,
one thing I say that I could see happening is vote him back in. I could see come midterms him step aside and let Kamala take over.
yeah, yeah, and I'm fine with that. I have no problem with
Yep.
Kamala. You know, people can talk shit about Kamala, but she's young. She's pretty strong. She's articulate, a little more progressive. I don't think that would be the worst thing in the world. You
No.
know, as much as I have a little disdain for the far left progressives, not so much in what they believe should be done, because I'm kind of in line with that, but just how they go about and doing it. They do it a lot like the radical right, and they're willing to at least act like they're going to risk democracy over getting what they want, in spite of the fact they have not enough support to actually get it done. They're trying to pressure the moderate Democrats into their way of thinking, and then it just creates a fucking shit show in the party, and that's the last thing we need.
Yeah, it's because when I listen to a progressive, like far left progressive, it's like I agree with everything you're saying. Everything you want is stuff I want too. But it seems like some of them are too headstrong and forget patience is a virtue.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's like the people who come to my page and try to tell me that nothing's happened to Donald Trump. Jack Smith has done nothing, and it's all based on the fact that Donald Trump's not in jail yet. Well, I'm sorry if that's your criteria. you're fucking wrong. That's just not the way it goes. Trust me, I'd love to see Donald Trump in jail right now. I'd love to have seen him right after the inauguration of Joe Biden. That's not how it's going to happen. You have to resolve yourself to the fact that you have to be a little patient. This immediate gratification only works only works for you when you go into Best Buy and want the 90-inch TV. It has nothing to do with politics or the law.
And same same thing with Jack Smith. He's not out there announcing his stuff, and that confuses people and makes people think, oh, he's not doing anything. It's like, no, he's doing a lot. It's just he's doing it the way it's normally done. It's not normal for a lawyer to be on the news making the rounds on the weekends and everything. That what Trump's lawyers are doing. Lawyers aren't supposed to be their client's PR person.
Right. I always tell people, take a look at Jack Smith. You may or may not like the way he does things or the speed at which he does it, but you have to trust him. If you've listened to him and you've seen his motions and his filings and all this stuff, the guy knows what the fuck he's doing. And I trust his his decisions over some dumb fuck on the internet that just wants it to happen faster. And people say, well, why do you trust Jack Smith? I say, because I fucking have to.
He's our only hope.
He's our only hope at this point. You know, people want to agonize about things they can't control. I'm just grateful that, at least in my mind, I see Jack Smith as a solid prosecutor, the right person to be prosecuting this situation. And if that's the best I can hope for, then I have to sit back and watch what happens. Hopefully it turns out my way, but if it doesn't, you know, what can you do? You gave it the best shot. And I think it will. I'm not worried about Jack Smith. I'm not worried about the trials. Donald Trump will get a conviction. And in terms of polls and what people want to do to vote for Donald Trump, one of the things the polls don't tell you when they show up on the news is that one conviction of one felony changes the landscape completely as to how people will vote. That's been part of the
Exactly.
polls.
And yeah, and like with me and my family, it, all of our hopes rest on the good that we know exists in this country and the good people that do live in this country who don't want to live this way. But at the same time, we do have our passports and we're ready to flee if
Yeah.
need be. I mean, I pray to God we never have to do that, but it's one of those things that we keep that in our periphery, but it's not something we focus on.
You know, other people have said that over the decades. If this guy gets in, I'm leaving the country. And most of the time they don't. And people will say, well, everybody said that. They won't do it. This is a little different situation. You know,
Exactly.
if a Democrat loses and a Republican's in and they're conservative and they're cutting things and doing all that, that's one thing. You can be pissed about it. You can even say I'm moving out of the country. But if Donald Trump gets in and we are headed quickly to a fascist state, then getting the fuck out of here may be the wise choice. I just
My
I just don't see it happening.
No, I don't see it happening either, but it it's something that as a transgender person in a lesbian relationship with children, I would get them out of the country as quickly as possible to protect them because if we go into a fascist state, I know from history the LGBT community and the Democrat community, the opposite side, political side, are the first ones to catch the shit.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little different for you because of your situation. You are literally in danger. And I'm a big old dumb white guy. Uh, but at the same time, whether I felt safe or not in a fascist state, I would not. I got to think about my granddaughter. I got to think about my kids. I got to figure
Exactly.
out a way to get them fucking out of the country. Now I have to say this because I've got some people that will always email me when they hear me saying, "Well, if Donald Trump wins and it's a fascist state, we should probably thinking about getting out of here." Some motherfucker will send me an email going, "What happened, Mike? You giving up? You're changing your mind? You feel like we're..." No, I'm not. I'm just supposing here. I don't think that Donald Trump has a prayer in hell to win. I don't think we will be a fascist state. Um, and I
And
think,
even if that did happen once my family was out, I would probably come back and fight.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, that's what it would take. But it's just that's not going to happen here. It's just
No,
not going to happen. Anyway, we're going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. Maddie, thank you for coming on the show. It's always a pleasure to have you on. Makes my life a whole lot easier. And after spending 10 hours with a 3-year-old, I needed some help with the weight, and you did a great job. Thank you.
thank you. I was happy to come on.
Well, and I appreciate Maddie thinking about me because I got to tell you, I love that 3-year-old kid, but that's motherfucking work. And I got to tell you something. I hope nobody else here tells me about it or hears me say this because they don't want to talk about this. And I promise you, I don't swear in front of my granddaughter ever, ever. She and I are. She's playing on a tablet, a little game, a little computer game. Okay, and she just set me back on my heels. She's playing, and something goes wrong, and she goes, "You fucker!" I go, "What?" I said, "Joni, you don't say that. You don't say." You know what her first response is? Grandpa, I'm not calling you that. I'm calling this guy that. I go, "It doesn't matter. You don't say that word." But now it's
Yeah,
in her head, it's in her vernacular. We got to do something to straighten that shit out. And I'm not the guy to do it. That's
we
mom or
our,
dad.
our kid, our youngest, when he was about 3, 4, he was sledding in our front yard and the sled got away from him. We got it on video, him going, ah, damn it, and trudging after it.
I wish she said, damn it. Um, but
Oh,
with
believe me, that they say a lot worse now.
what you see in my family, as you might gather, I swear a lot. Everybody in my family swears a lot. We don't do it in front of kids. So I don't know how she got this way. The troubling thing about this, she said the word fucker in such a crisp, clean, perfectly enunciated word. I'm going, God damn it. You know, it could have been, made the mistake saying fire truck. No, she said fucker and she meant it and she was using it properly. Trust me, if anybody knows, it's me. That I sat her down. I said, now, honey, you can't use that word. And she can't say she's heard me use it because I never use it around her. I said, you cannot use that word. And she goes, why? I said, it makes people sad. She goes, I don't want to do that. And I said, so stop doing it. She says, okay. And I said, and she says, pinky swear. Now, this is out the wind because we've done this before. We're cooking something and she's eating all the stuff as we're putting it in. I said, honey, don't do that. She goes, I promise, pinky swear. The moment she does the pinky swear, she's back stuffing shit in her face. That pinky swear doesn't mean jack shit to her at all. I don't even know if she understands what it means, but this is the problem we're going to have to deal with. This is the problem you're going to deal with little kids. And I'm glad I'm
when
not the dad. I'm just the grandpa. I can,
when my daughter was in preschool, she ran up to her teacher and said, "So and so over there's being a dumbass."
wow, wow.
And and it took everything from my wife and I not to when the teacher told us not to ask, were they being a dumbass?
Yeah, was it accurate? But when I was with her, she had this metal car in her hand, and she's dancing around, and she walks up to me, and she tried to hit me with the car, not in a malicious way, but just playing around. She hit me, and she hit me right on the lip, right in the middle of the lip, and it hurt. And I didn't say anything um, at first. I said, "Ow, that hurt." And so I thought, her sympathetic, compassionate side would get to it. But then within 2 minutes later, she does it again,
Hmm.
hits me right in the mouth, and it hurts. And at that point, I said, I'm going to speak strongly to her. I'm not going to yell at her like I would, my kid. I said, you do not do that again. That hurt me, and you would hurt somebody else doing it. You do not do that. Now, she didn't like that. So she immediately crossed her arms and she went into the bedroom and laid down. And she's mad. She's pouting. And so I'm sitting there and I'm feeling guilty about it, thinking, I can't have this kid mad at me the remaining 8 hours. So I said, how do I soften this blow a little bit? I want her to understand. So I made a choice. It wasn't a good choice, but it was the best choice a grandfather can make. She's in there laying mad as hell. So I go in there and she's sitting there looking mad at me. I bend down, her little shirt in front. I pull it up, expose her belly, and then give her what my family calls a bazerba in the belly, where you just kind of blow in there and it sounds funny and it feels funny. And
Raspberries.
I stood up and I stood up and looked at her seriously. And I said, "And I hope you learned your lesson." And I walked out, and she's laughing at me, so she knows she's got me pretty much wrapped around her finger. Grandpa can talk loud, but doesn't mean shit. Doesn't mean any more than her pinky swear, which is worthless, just worthless. Anyway, Maddie, thanks for coming on. I appreciate you spending the time talking and making the show that much more interesting by having some insight from somebody who hasn't spent 10 hours with a 3-year old. For those of you listening, I hope you have a great day, and we will talk to you again tomorrow.